having a conversation today about pros and cons to home ownership versus apartment living. Now this is just my opinion. Everybody is different and what you like could be totally different. There's people who love living out in the country or off the grid in the mountains of wherever. And then there's other people who love the city and want to be right in the midst of everything. New York City, LA, Dallas, Houston, Miami. And then there's others who like to live somewhere in between. Now wherever you go, there's usually a choice of how and where you want to live. Of course, I have my RV followers. You guys got it planned just right. My kind of thing. Of course, I kind of like having a home base and would be great to have that RV for me. But there's always expenses when you have more than one place to live. And then of course I have some boater people who live on boats also watching, and also you guys got it right too, my kind of thing. So now I want an RV, boat, and live here. But do I? I don't know. My choices of where I want to live and how I want to live change or has changed throughout my life. And I probably will continue, you know, once the kids are grown and they decide to move, and I may want to follow them, I don't know. Will I keep a home here? Maybe. I really don't want to be in the cold wherever they go. The thing is, do I want to keep a house? Do I want to maybe just rent? Say they were to move to New York City, for example, and I wanted to spend some time there. Maybe I keep this house, maybe I decide to rent instead. And I don't know. I've lived in many, many apartments. As I have mentioned before, I must have moved 15 times before we got married. And we lived in a couple of different apartments when we first got married, while we were, well, like 4 apartments before we built our house in the country on a tree farm. It was a Christmas tree farm that we bought. So I could tell you my experience living in apartments versus living in the country in a house, or living down here in Florida in a house. I like them both. I honestly do. And I know people will say, well, you're throwing money out living in an apartment because prices go up and it's not yours. I understand that, but on the other hand, people today usually don't stay in the same home. I think the average is 7 years. People move about every 7 years. Sometimes it's a lot more than that, especially, well, and that number was a few years ago that I read it, so I don't even know what the number is today. The pros for an apartment for me was especially when I was single with Rick, he can fix things in a house, and so I don't really have to worry about it. But if I were alone or just somebody who didn't know how to fix things, I like the apartment life, and I'm not mentioning condos here only because I've never lived in a condo. I know when the crash happened, a lot of people got screwed over here in Florida, where they were paying association fees and the building itself went belly up, and oh, there was a lot of complications I couldn't even begin to tell you. So I'm going to leave that out, and maybe you can make a video if you've had an experience with condo living versus home living versus apartment living, because that would be interesting. The apartment living I liked because if something went wrong, I would call the office and they would come and fix the apartment. The bad thing was sometimes they would want to come at an hour I was sleeping, or an hour they said, or they say they will be at the apartment to fix something at a certain time, then they don't show up. So you stayed home for nothing and they don't come to the next day. So there's a little pros and cons. But same with when you have a house. If you can't fix it yourself, you hire somebody and then sometimes they don't show up. Same thing. With apartments, I liked, especially down here when we first moved here, the apartment I liked because there was a central pool. Nobody ever used it. It's, you know, a few people. And I was able to meet people and new friends, and everybody was from the north moving down because most people rent first when they first moved down here. So it was really cool meeting people from Ohio, where we're from, and Pennsylvania and Michigan and New York and other places. So, you know, that's where we hung out after work. People would come and we'd meet up and meet at the pool. You didn't have to invite them to your house. So if your house was a mess, you didn't have to worry about it. You just say, see you down at the pool after dinner. And sometimes we would have potlucks. And so that was a lot of fun. The negative thing was it gets a little loud and babies crying, you know, right above you. And they were wonderful people, so don't get me wrong. It's just, you know, at 3 in the morning, you're finally getting to sleep, and, you know, Rick would have to get up early, and baby starts crying, and you could hear things. So it's real important if you do get an apartment to try to see if it's a newer one, and hopefully they have better insulation. And even though this apartment wasn't that old, so check the insulation out in between apartments, because I could hear everything, and from the cooking and hammering of the meat, and kids running, you know, above you, boom, 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 boom. Of course, I didn't mind that too much. It was just the middle of the night that was the most. I don't care about other noise while I'm awake. I can care less. You know, it doesn't bother me. As far as the cost going up, yes, that's a real pain, but owning a home can be very expensive. We just put an air conditioner in, and for a 1,600 square foot house in Florida, they're very expensive. They can range from $6,000 to $9,000 to purchase and have it put in. And permits. Everybody wants a permit for anything you do on your house. So that gets costly. Yes, it is your house. You could do whatever you want with it, color it, paint it however you want, do whatever you want in the yard. We put this white fence that you see here because the privacy fence. The one we had before when we moved in was falling down. It was a wood one, rotting, so we replaced it. When people say about the rent going up, it's kind of balances out in my opinion, because how many months rent can you pay to equal an $8,000 air conditioner unit or $5,000 fence or a $9,000 roof that I need? Now, having your house, it's usually you can get a larger square footage for your money. If you have a mortgage on your home, yes, it'll be less per month than rent usually, and it doesn't go up if you have a fixed mortgage. You have repairs on your home, unless it's a brand new home, but even then you still have costs. I like having our home because, like I said, you have more privacy, you got more space, you know, to run the dog around in your own yard. The rent, what I liked about it was if you want to move, if you're the type of person who likes to move or needs to move for a job, and especially with today's economy, you don't know if you're going to be able to keep your job unless you own a business. But even then, that can go belly up at any time, depending on when the economy decides to crash or whatever, or your health goes bad and you just can't keep working, and then you can't afford the house that you're in, and it's not so easy to sell a house. Even in a booming economy, it takes time. Even if you found a buyer today, it still takes time for the person who's buying the house, unless he's got cash, to get the loan. It takes months. And then you got the closing day and closing fees for the person buying the house, and that takes time. Oh, inspections, you know, they're going to want to have the house inspected. So it could take months to sell the house, not to mention to get it ready to sell. You can't just put your house up. You can, but you'll get more money for your house if you prepare it and make it look as nice as possible to show people who want to buy it. So it's important to keep your house in tip-top shape. Even if you think you're going to live in your home forever, there's a chance that you might have to move, or you want to move. When we built our house in Ohio, we thought we'd live there forever. I didn't think I'd want to move anywhere. I never liked the cold, but I never thought I would actually move. It's just not in my mind that I could live a different lifestyle. That's the other thing, that sometimes when people move from state to state, or just moving from one place to the other, they think they need to live the same lifestyle. And this is the fun thing about life, is you can live any lifestyle you want. So just because you grew up in the suburbs, for example, and you grow up and then you're living in the suburbs, or however it is that you're living, don't think that you can't just pack up, move, and live a completely different lifestyle. Like many of you RVers know this for a fact, or you sold your house and you're living in this RV. Some of you already know what I'm talking about changing your lifestyle. Many of us have downsized, from big houses or large properties to moving to the apartments or moving to a house. We all have to live somewhere. So you just need to decide where you would like to live and then how would you like to live. Living in an apartment makes you a little bit more free. Like I said, even if you have a contract, you can still break that contract, but find a sublease person to sublease your apartment until the contract is over, and you can move on to a different place. You can still buy a house, enjoy everything that it has to offer, and sell it, but just know that it takes a lot more time to sell a home and to move. You could always rent a house. Living in an apartment is just one option. Many people like to rent homes instead of purchasing a home for the same reason, so you could move, or if something happens in the house, the air conditioning breaks, you could just tell the owner, hey, you got to fix the air conditioner, or the roof is leaking, you got to fix it. Am I saving any money being in a house? For now, it works great because there's 4 of us. I need the space. I don't need it, but it's more comfortable. For now, this house, and I may just keep this house forever or rent it out one day if I decide to move. I don't know. And that's one thing I've learned is I don't know. We make all the plans we want in this world, and it makes plans for you. So do what you want to do, make your plans, but be very flexible, kind of go with the flow, and make the best of wherever you end up living. If you could think of any other pros and cons of apartment living versus living in a house, comment below. Well, thumbs up if you like. Share if this will help anybody who might be thinking about apartment living or house living. You can't lose either way, really. So don't fret over it. Don't worry about, oh my God, am I making a mistake? Just make sure that you're not buying a money pit. Of course, when you're buying a house, have it inspected before you purchase. And as far as apartments, you can go month to month, or you can sign the year contract. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.